So I've decided to give myself a little bit of a break when it comes to recording complexities, let's say, because we're coming off of Nemesis September, as well as that extremely lengthy look at Legacy Menasor. So I'm just doing a single figure this time, give myself a little bit of a breather, and we're looking at Transformers Legacy Prime Universe Dreadwing. The reason I have Dreadwing is, well, two main reasons. One, I prefer the blue and gold and red and gunmetal-y color scheme over the green from Skyquake. Even though they're the same exact figure with like a slightly different weapon, but like I just like the blue better than the green. And also, I've been on a bit of a Dreadwind kick since I got Fans Hobbies version, which I hope to make a video of at some point in the future. And yeah, because of that, I think, Dreadwing, Dreadwind, they're very similar. Plus, Dreadwind and Darkwing combined to make Dreadwing. So, name-wise, I feel like this kind of fits with the whole Dreadwind thing. I know they're not the same character or anything like that. It's just that's the connection I make in my brain because of words. And yeah, so we are looking at this fellow today. And also, my tripod broke as I was setting up for filming. So, awesome. I've kind of got a very, very quick and dirty fix that seems to be working, but if you notice a lot of wiggling as I'm adjusting things, that's why. But anyway, Legacy Dreadwing is actually a very cool figure. The transformation is pretty much just as much of a thing as you may have heard. I think this figure is somewhat infamous for that, though I will say, once you know the trick, it's not that bad. In fact, I should have brought up the yeah, I didn't prep for this as well as I should have, but I should have brought it up. There's a user on TFW. I'm very sorry, I don't remember the name. If I can remember, I'll try to look it up and include the name at the bottom of the screen here. But yeah, user on TFW is basically like, here's how you transform the Nosecone so that everything fits together well. And it's like, once you know that trick, it is actually perfectly fine. Everything holds together well. The backpack sits more flush to the back as it should. The torso is not stretched up weirdly and all that, which we'll get into when we do the transformation. I'll explain as I go. But yeah, without that trick, this is kind of a pain in the butt, and some people have taken to modifying the figure, but it is nice that like you don't have to modify the figure. It just sucks that the only way to transform it properly without modification is to do some very, very specific movements with the Nosecone when you're transforming it, and that is, let's say, a bit of an oversight in the design. With all that out of the way, here is Dreadwing, and he does look very good. As previously mentioned, I really like the colors here. It's a really nice shade of blue, and like the blue and gold combination gives it kind of like a Blue Angels vibe in terms of the, not like the actual patterning, but just the colors. But I do like that the gold is kind of kept to a minimum. Like you get gold, you get this silver, possibly gunmetal color, and you actually get more of this than you do the gold. But it really does, it all just kind of pops against that blue. It works really well. The red is kind of take it or leave it, but it's fine. And also, the jet itself is certainly a shape, isn't it? You may have noticed that this guy is a little wobbly. That is because I've got the gun mounted on the bottom, and for whatever reason, I don't know if this is a problem with Skyquake or not, but the gun kind of sticks down a little bit below where the front landing gear is supposed to be, rather than more flush to the body. And because of that, it has a tendency to hang down ever so slightly and make this wobble back and forth. So I'm just going to take the gun off, but as you can see, it stores along the bottom of the jet. It just plugs into, let's be real, his butt. I guess is that other part of the lower extremities I'm not going to go into. And then we're left with a much more stable, non-wobbly jet, and here is the gun, and it is Skyquake's gun, except it's a big cannon at the end rather than a Gatling gun. And he also has the silly little translucent sword thing that you can store there, but we'll look at these more when we get to robot mode. Now, for the jet mode, as I said, it's a very strange shape, but it does work. The wings are probably a little too tiny and too far back, but like it's a neat shape. I like these little bladed things along the side, the little winglets or whatever. It's basically just covered in wings, including like the tail wings, tail fins, or tail fins, tail wings, whatever these are called. I don't know. They're also detailed very nicely. I like that you've got this trim along 3 of the, well, 6 of the 8 wings and winglets on the figure. These can be adjusted, as many people have pointed out. You can flatten those out, and then you can use these little tabs here to peg needle nose onto. I don't have needle nose, mostly because I don't have an interest in the character, and it's just the one figure that came out, so I'm just like, eh. But I'm curious to see what, if anything, they repaint needle nose into, because if they do something with that, I might get that for this. Also, I think one of the design elements of this vehicle mode that's kind of strange is this little section back here. It makes it look like there's a secondary cockpit back here, which may be intentional. I don't remember enough of the Prime vehicle mode design to know if this was actually there, but it actually makes me think of Jetfire / Skyfire a little bit, because he had that like secondary tiny jet pod along the back. I mean, this is not the same thing, clearly. It just, this having like a secondary cockpit looking thing behind the actual cockpit does make me think of that. But there is some nice detailing going around. I like the vents along the wings here, and the some nice little molded lines going along the back. I also dig the booster along the back here. Got some additional boosters here on the underside. It is folded up robot, but it's folded up robot that folds up pretty well, I think, all things considered. It's not as egregious as other jet formers. And also I think it's cool how the shoulder pads kind of fill in this section up here. It's also kind of neat that because of the way that the figure transforms, you can actually open the cockpit and there are a couple of tiny little seats in there. I just think that's fun. It is technically necessary for the transformation too, so this in particular doesn't bother me, but yeah. And I don't really know what else to say about this mode. As I said, it's surprisingly well covers up the robot mode. You've got the landing gear that you can fold in if you want to go swooshy swooshy. It's a very bulky airplane, jet, whatever. But I think it looks cool for what it is. And it is also rather large. We'll see more of this when we get to the robot mode, because that really kind of took me by surprise, which is silly to say, I know, but when I got this guy, I wasn't like, I knew he was a leader class, but for whatever reason, that didn't really connect in my brain until I started putting him next to other figures. And we'll definitely see it more in robot mode, but Dreadwing, and by extension Skyquake, actually pretty sizable. So we'll bring in the typical size comparisons here, and also some more stuff has changed since my last recording session. Burnout is now all dressed up. She is covered in repro labels, and I don't know, I just thought, you know, the other size comparison figures that I've been using have been all nice and dressed up with repro labels for a while. I thought it was kind of Burnout's turn. And it's a cool set, but this is not about Burnout. But yeah, you can see the compact car is much smaller than the jet, though not small enough. If this were to scale, I think Burnout would probably be like that big. So yeah, not perfect in terms of scale, but this kind of stuff rarely is. And really, if it were to be perfect, then it'd just be a mess. Also, you may notice Rotor Storm is sporting the couple of new Micromasters, Flak and was Top Shot, I think. And yeah, I don't know. I think Flak is really cool, and came with Top Shot, so I have them both. I just wanted Flak. I don't know. I can't really explain it. Anyway, because I was talking about him, here we've got Dreadwing with Dreadwind, the Power of the Primes version, which has actually since been Reaper labeled up. This is not my original Power of the Primes version. This is another one that I got recently, but yeah, I stickered this one up now too, so we're all good there. I've been considering replacing Burnout with Dreadwind as my standard size comparison thing again, but I think I want to stick with Burnout. Also, I want to get a second gun for him someday. Not a high priority. But anyway, let's keep this moving. So finally, the best one, the one you've all been waiting for, here is Dreadwing with the Duck Tank. And now it's time to go over that transformation. But before we do, real quick, if you like this video for whatever reason, or any of the other videos that I've done on the channel, and you want to support me monetarily, I do have a Patreon, link in the description, and it is a single $1 tier. That's all I've got. That $1 a month gets you early access to new videos, so you get like a couple of days lead time whenever new videos come out. Additionally, if you'd rather not do like a monthly subscription thing, I also have a coffee, link in the description for that. So with all that, oh, also, if you want to support the channel without spending money, you can do the like, comment, subscribe, share, that kind of thing. So yeah, transformation. This is going to be a thing. Now, it's fine. It's totally fine. It's a little bit awkward and parts clashy in a couple of places just because of the way that this was designed, but if you, like, it's more a matter of, like, I'm going to push these in while I'm talking. It's more a matter of, like, angling things, moving things, and then re-angling things to keep stuff right. So, to start, going to do the legs. The wings here will untab from the shins right around here. If you pull this up, you can see there's a tab there that tabs in right in there. So you untab that, bring this out a bit, and then rotate this down. Straighten out the leg, rotate at the thigh, and then the part that I and a lot of other people really like, this little winglet here untabs from the leg, rotates up, and then this will tab in here to both get the little wing out of the way and also fill in the gap at the back of the leg. That's really cool. And for some reason this is suddenly not... Why aren't you staying down? Anyway, and point the toe. Why aren't you pegging in? It's supposed to peg in and stay, but it's popping out for some... It wasn't doing that before. Weird. I don't like it. Anyway, I'm not gonna struggle with this. Okay, fine. Anyway, unpeg this from here, bring that out, rotate it down, rotate at the thigh, straighten out the knee, unpeg this, swing it around and up, and peg that into place. And this one is staying. I don't know why this one suddenly isn't. Like I said, it was staying before. I might need to look into that later. And then open up the toe. So there, we've got lower body all done. Now the upper body is where all of the challenge lies. So you want to take these shoulder armor bits and untab them. They tab in, there's like a tab here that tabs in right here. So just untab those and kind of bring them forward. Give you room to do other stuff. Want to take the arms here and bring them out so that you can unpeg them from each other and swing them out. With those swung out, you can untab this thing from the center. This also, this panel, these panels, they tab in, looks like it already came untabbed, but they tab in up here. So when you split this apart, these will also untab from up here. They don't hold in super securely, but they don't really need to for the jet mode. So, with these angled out, now we can kind of angle the lower body back a little bit to rotate the waist 90 degrees, just 90 degrees. You want to have it like this, because that gives you the room to swing these bits down and around, but you don't want to swing them down all the way. And we can bring the arms forward more. Now we can do the upper body section, which gives so many people trouble, including me. When I first got this thing, I was getting really frustrated. But again, once I found the trick. So you want to unplug this from up here. It kind of clips tabs in somehow around here, but I'm going to pull that up and be careful of the head, which is in there. I find the best thing to do is you can push, there's this whole armature here, you can push the shell of the fuselage section up and around that hinge. By pushing that up, that pushes it away from the face and gives you a lot more room to bring it back, so you don't have to worry about scratching the paint on the face. And the neck is on a slider. I'm going to slide it forward to get that kind of away from everything going on here. And something weird about this I've noticed is there's this rotational hinge here, or this rotational swivel here. So you can rotate this section around. It serves no purpose. I have no idea why that's there, other than maybe so that you can angle things around to get like a better look at certain things, but like it serves no actual purpose in the transformation. It's weird. Anyway, I'm going to bring these shoulder pads up to get them out of the way, and now we can do the nose cone. This is the important part. So what you want to do is you want to bring this back in and push this hinge back into the cavity here. And you want it like this, because this will give you the proper angles that you need to do the next part. So you want that in like that. And then you can bring this up, untab the nose cone, pull up cockpit, and now making sure that this doesn't pop out, because it might pop out. So I like to just kind of brace it with a finger. You want to angle the nose cone, and then when you push this in, you want to make sure to hold this landing gear in place. So this is typically the best way to do it, with the finger up here and thumb down here. And push this in until you'll feel it kind of click. So just keep pushing until it clicks. Like that. It feels like you're doing stuff you're not supposed to be doing, but it will click into place. And once that's clicked into place, fold the nose cone up the rest of the way. And now the nose cone and this they're not exactly flush. They're on slightly different levels. Like this is slightly more to the right, this is slightly more to the left, but they're basically parallel. And that's how you want it. And this just kind of hangs out. And that is how you transform this section so that you can do the rest of the transformation and everything will be peachy. So bring this down and keep this inside here. Like the actual where it sits can change, but you want to make sure this stays inside this piece here. So you bring this down, swing. I'm going to swing these up a little bit just so you can see what I'm doing, because this piece is on a telescoping bit. You want to slide that in. And then with that slid in, there's it is going to be hard to see, but there is this kind of, these two little clips down there that will go into this piece here. Personally, what I like to do, rather than push it down and click it in, I like to slide it in. So just line this up and then slide it forward. And that will lock the torso and the waist assembly together. It keeps this pushed in so it's not like sticking up slightly. And this just lines everything up so much better. And now these armatures will finish swinging up, and there are these little tabs on the insides of these armatures that settle into these little slots right there. You might need to adjust the upper bit here, like the angle of this just a little bit, but you want to rotate that up, and that will settle in there. So that will kind of help to solidify the torso. And same deal on this side. This shoulder out of the way. Bring this up and get that into that little notch. There we go. That is the part that is the that is the problem with this transformation, just getting all of that lined up. But once it's lined up, you're good. Then rotate the waist around all the way. So now he is looking more like a proper robot. For the backpack, you want to, with these wings still out, you want to start to rotate this bit in And as you rotate it, you kind of want to swing it in so that you can take this little tail fin here and swing that up and around 180 degrees, and then you can finish rotating that up. And that will be how it's oriented to make the backpack. And same deal on this side, rotate it, swing this up and around, and swing that around all the way. Now, from what I've seen, it works best to actually thread the open cockpit through the hole that's left in the backpack right around here. So you actually want to stick that out through that hole and bring this in underneath the cockpit and then bring these down, and then these will all tab together. And now this is kind of sticking out a little bit through that hole, but this whole connection here won't be pushing up against the top of the cockpit. So I believe that's how it's supposed to go. Could be wrong, but that just kind of seems to work. I also like to angle the wings up and then angle the wingtips forward a little bit, just to kind of change the profile of the wings a tad. And these can fall down, stay up. It's all like whatever you prefer. You got options. Okay. Now the easiest part, the arms, you just want to hinge this assembly. It's on a double hinge, so you kind of hinge this down and hinge this forward. So with that extended, you can see there's the elbow extended, there's the elbow pushed in. And then you can flip out the fist, and then this panel will swing in and tab into the little hole by the wrist, and that locks all that together. And bring this down. And then the shoulder pad is on a multi-hinge system, so you want to angle this and then just kind of bring it forward and get that over the arm, however you really want. Like, I kind of try and get it as snug as I can, but you can do it however. And this one too can bring out the fist, bring out that panel and take that in, and then unhinge all that, bring this out, bring this down, and for some reason the down ratchet on this arm is really tight. I don't know why. It goes out with no problem, you can see. But going back in, I really have to kind of struggle to get it to go. I don't know what's going on there. And then adjust the shoulder pad, and you are done. There is Dreadwing, and by extension Skyquake, in robot mode. And I just don't understand why this is suddenly not pegged. It just pegged in. I don't know. But anyway, there's Dreadwing, and by extension Skyquake. And this is a very, very cool figure that I definitely will admit I hesitated with Skyquake after seeing like some of what people were saying about it. And I don't regret hesitating on Skyquake, mostly because of that green and preferring the blue. But this is actually a really cool figure. I cannot deny that. He is very deceptively large too. Like, messing around with him, I was mostly messing around with just him, so I didn't realize just how big he was until I got him next to other figures. And then it was like, oh, wow, he's a large boy. But this is very cool. Now, some people have said he has stability problems. As you can tell, he will fall over due to lack of heals if you like poke him a bunch, but like standing like this, he's relatively stable. And some of that too is like I've got more of the wing kind of angled back. I imagine if I distributed the weight a little bit more forward, then he'd be, yeah, it's a little bit more stable when the wings aren't swept back like that. And it's also why I do like a very slight back thing, because you can angle them back more, but I feel like if I angle them back too far, it'll just make them really heavy, back heavy. But, you know, if you adjust the legs to accommodate for it and stuff, it's fine. and he's very cool. Now, a thing that does bug me about this guy is the torso. I think the design is cool, the molding is cool. I love the multi-tone colors, like the very dark, almost black blues here and here, the gunmetal and silver combination, where you've got the much darker gunmetal here and then silver for the venting. The dark translucent red, which doesn't really bother me, except you can kind of see through it from certain angles. The gold Decepticon Air Force logo, I guess. Like, it's a cool torso, but the thing that bums me out about it is it's very flat. It just lacks dimension. It's got molding, but there's not enough dimension to it. Whereas, you know, he's got other dimensionality elsewhere, like with the legs, the thighs, the shins, the shoulders, the head, like all that stuff. So this just is so flat. Thing is, one thing that kind of offsets it is that neck slider. Now, from what I've seen, the expectation is that this is the intended transformation with the head slid forward, and that's fine. Like, it does bring the head forward, makes it a little bit more prominent. Thing is, I actually prefer to keep it slid back, because when the head is slid back, I actually think the head lines up with the shoulders a little bit better. Like, as you can see, the shoulders and the head are now more parallel. And in addition to the head lining up with the shoulders, which just seems more natural to me, having the head sit a little bit further back, it doesn't give the chest more dimensionality, but it kind of helps to hide the fact that the chest is so flat. Because when you slide this forward, it just goes like face, chest, straight down. But when you push this back, there's a little bit of an extra popping out bit to the line there that I just think really does help. But the thing that's cool about this is you can do it either way. Honestly, like, this is just speculation on my part, but I actually think that the slider on the neck isn't to, you know, be like jet mode, robot mode. I think it's actually to accommodate the transformation because of how this whole assembly goes over the head. I feel like it's there to give you a way to kind of keep the head sliding back and forth so that it doesn't risk the paint too much and doesn't risk snapping things off if you're like pushing too hard or from the wrong angle or just by virtue of the transformation itself. I don't know. So yeah, that's what I like to do to offset that. But yeah, this is a really cool design. Like, it is not perfectly accurate to the show model, of course. None of the Legacy Prime figures are, but it works. Like, this design, I think, works incredibly well for Dreadwing, and by extension, Skyquake. It's, again, just that green that I'm kind of on. I love the color breakup and the shape of it all. The proportions are great. I'm always a big fan of like giant shoulder pads, and these are some great shoulder pads that stick way out. They kind of emphasize the angles with these little winglets up here, so it all just looks very sharp and pointy going out this way, but then you've also got these points that are going in, so it creates some really kind of dynamic look to everything. The robot itself is an interesting combination of elements where you've got mostly flat, more flat and almost rounded surfaces in a lot of areas, but then when you get to like the upper body, he starts to get spiky, like the shoulders, the spiky wings, and the spikiness on the head along that head crest. It's a neat design, I think. And also I'm noticing now you've got a little bit of the head crest shape mirrored in the top of the torso here. That's kind of interesting. But yeah, it's very cool. It is cool. The colors are pretty consistently broken up, which I like. Like how, you know, it would have been nice if there were a bit of either the gunmetal or silver or gold accents around the legs, but there aren't. But the thing is, it's not as big a deal as I've noticed with like other figures, because yeah, you've got a little bit of that gunmetal-y gray around the knees, but it's kind of lost because the tone blends in with the knee plastic, which is fine. It's just, it goes, you know, like from this dark gray to blue to a lighter gray to blue to lighter gray to dark gray, and that breaks it up nicely. I just think, you know, Ideally, it would be cool if there was a little bit of gold maybe in the hip or in like the shin area. But this is not bad at all. That's a minor nitpick. This isn't like, oh, it's a big slab of blue. It's broken up enough that I feel like that color breakup isn't necessary. It's just, it would be nice. Whereas the upper body is broken up pretty nicely because you've got that gold around the forearms, you've got the gray going up in the biceps, and also some of that gunmetal gray painted around the forearms too. So there's a lot of detailing on this guy that is painted, which is pretty cool. Some of which you don't even see until you're in robot mode, so I do really appreciate that. He cleans up pretty nicely, especially if you're able to transform him properly, because yeah, if you don't, then this doesn't sit quite right. It kind of sticks out at a weird angle, and this stretches up. But with everything supposedly properly transformed, he does clean up pretty nice. I'm not a huge fan of this dangling out of the backpack like some really weird little tail, but it's fine. You know, I'm not really looking at him from that angle most of the time. It's like from this angle. And looking at him from back here, this is not where my eye is immediately drawn. It's more like the gold accents along the top and this kind of mass in the center here. Don't really get this, like having this little bit sticking up over the head. I'm kind of whatever about. I kind of feel like this didn't even need to be here, even in jet mode, but it is what it is. And yeah, I think this is cool though, because even with this all transformed around, it kind of looks like he has his jetpack and these little, like the little adjustable wings, the big adjustable wings. It's cool. It's like he could fly as a robot without needing to turn into a jet. And like I said, it's been a while since I've watched Prime, so that may be the case. Now, looking at Dreadwing's head, it's Skyquake's head. It's the same head sculpt, from what I can tell. But it is done really nicely. Again, like the color combination of the blue, the gold, and that kind of gunmetal gray, it's a really nice combination of colors. The gold and the gunmetal do, when you've got like this little line of gold, it does blend together a little bit. You don't lose the gold. It just doesn't pop as much when it's right up against this here. But that kind of doesn't matter because you've got this really nice gold on blue here. And you've got more of like the gray on blue up here. So it is contrasted nicely due to the blue plastic around it. And also it just looks good. There's a lot of really nice detailing. The shape is incredibly nice. I like that the head crest goes back just far enough that like it hits that piping block, but since there's this little divot back here, it doesn't necessarily look like this is unpainted head crest. It just kind of looks like this is where the head crest ends, which I appreciate it. It kind of bums me out sometimes when heads very obviously have painted sculpting that just stops when it gets to the back half of the head. And the sculpt of the head itself is also very nice. It's got that kind of... It's definitely reminiscent of like Skyquake and Dreadwing, but I don't know, it has this kind of harshness to it, this kind of pinchedness, which I think is actually kind of cool. I'm trying to remember what this reminds me of. Like, something about the sculpting in the face in particular reminds me of some kind of sci-fi thing that I'm just blanking on right now. Whereas like almost humanoid, but like using these layered metallic plates that look very robotic, but like the shape is still human. And I don't know, it's just, I like that aesthetic. So yeah, cool head sculpt, cool toy overall, just cool look in general. Now for the articulation, the head, as you saw, is on a ball joint, so you can go up quite a bit and down a decent amount. You get a tiny bit of left and right tilt, but because of the way the ball joint sits in that socket, that's not really going to tilt much, but it does rotate around. So you can get pretty expressive with it. The shoulder pads are on a multi-jointed, multi-hinged system, so you can get them pretty much wherever you need in order to move the arms around. The arms can do a full 360 in theory, but they will hit stuff going on up here. But if you wanted to go up and out, you could. It's just the shoulder pads start to look a little weird. I think you might even be able to get the shoulder pads down. Yep, if you really wanted to, you could actually angle the shoulder pads down and around so it looks like they're still hanging onto the shoulder. It's a bit of work to do, but you can do it. The arms do go in and out, and they actually go out a little bit further than 90. And of course, again, like the shoulder pads can accommodate because of the multi-jointed system. And this one, fortunately, I can bring in without it being too argumentative. Oh, no, we're being argumentative now. Cool. I don't know why it does that. There is a bicep rotation. You've got a double jointed elbow, so you can go up and you can curl in over 90 degrees. Due to the sculpting, you're not going to get like all the way in, but if you angle it just right, you do get a really nice deep elbow bend. And for some reason, one of the joints on this elbow is very tight. Like, it still moves, it's just very tight, very snug. And as you saw, for both the transformation and for articulation, there's a panel here, so you can bring the arms forward. And if you bring them forward too far, they do not play nice with the shoulder pads, but this will come into play when we get to the accessory. You also do get wrist swivels. Despite all of what's going on with the transformation, the wrists do swivel and can swivel a pretty decent amount, though due to the cut in the forearm bit here, if you rotate it too much, this will start scraping against the gold painted section there, so you might want to be careful, not bring it out too far. And then as you saw, you do get a waist rotation, and despite everything going on back there, you can go around a full 360. You technically can get a bit of an ab crunch, but it doesn't really hold. See if you can kind of unslide this. Yeah, you can kind of work it into an ab crunch, though honestly I don't think you need to. It's probably better to just leave it. The hips are on faux ratchets and can go forward to, oh, there we go. Can go forward to pretty much 90 and can go back to pretty much 90 and out to pretty much 90. And then you've got a really nice thigh swivel, which is great because it's both, you know, covered up a little bit by this plating, which I love when they do stuff like that, but also because the thighs have to rotate 90 degrees for transformation, it's not impeded by this plate. So that's really nice. And then you actually, despite appearances, even though you use this single knee for transformation, there's actually a secondary knee joint. So Skyquake and Dreadwing both have double jointed knees and can bend quite a bit without having to unpeg this panel here. So that's really, oh, it just popped out. So that's really cool. There we go. I think, I don't know, I think that's really cool how like you only use the lower joint for transformation, but this panel would get in the way for robot mode. And even though that knee bend is fine, they were like, no, let's give him a second joint. So now you've got really nice deep knee bends on this guy. That's very cool. And then for the feet, you get a little bit of ankle tilt. It's not great, but it does tilt. And as you can see, like it doesn't like to stay at a certain point. Since this panel cooperates more, we'll just do that so I could show you what's happening here. Basically, it's just the joints just will not stay. Something in the way it's like sculpted, I think. It just doesn't want to stay. And it's not the landing gear, because you can see there's actually grooves cut in this joint so that it can go around the landing gear, but oh well. Still, you get some pretty decent ankle tilt. You can't move up or down, but you can point the toe for whatever reason if you want to. So yeah. He is pretty well posable. And again, he just looks freaking cool. And I love these colors. And it's just it's a cool figure. Now for the accessories, he has his big old cannon, and this thing, this little sword thing. There's just a little tab here you can pull to swing this out, and you get this translucent red sword that really, like, can go a little bit further out that I don't like, because this joint isn't really strong enough to keep it from accidentally getting bumped like that, so it's just kind of annoying. It's kind of flimsy. It doesn't look good. And for some reason, I do not understand, they molded these, like, tabs along one side of the handle, so he can only hold it in his left hand. It will not, well, I mean, I guess you could hold it in his right hand if you spin it around, but like, you want to hold it like this, like the actual sword is designed to be held, it has to go in his left hand. I don't understand why this is a thing. Maybe it was supposed to combine with other weapons at some point and they scrapped that idea. Maybe it's still a thing. I don't know. But I'm not a fan of this. And it looks fine in his hand. It just, I don't know. It's kind of on the small, dinky side, and I'm not the biggest fan of this. The gun is honestly also a little small, if I'm being, well, I just said honestly. Really, though, it is kind of on the small side for what it's supposed to be, because the guns that these guys used in the show were definitely beefier. But, you know, budgets and all that. That's hand, I don't like this. I do appreciate the fact that if you don't like the sword, you can at least just store it under here, so it's like out of sight, out of mind. You never have to think about it or even acknowledge that it exists anymore because it tucks away in there. And this, you can fold out this little handle, and you can use two hands on it. As you can see, as I said, there's like it's a cannon and not a Gatling gun like Skyquake uses. You can peg this into one hand, and then bring the other hand around, and peg this into the bottom of the hand. And because of all the joints on both the gun and the arms, you can get him to hold it in both hands, and you can like bring it up, have it so that he's actually like shooting it. Get this out of the way, you can kind of, there we go. So he can blast at the those pesky Autobots who he believes killed his brother. And yeah, it's fine. I'm not as enamored with this as like a necessity for the character or figure as some other folks are. Like, I like Prime. I think Dreadwing and Skyquake were interesting and cool in their own right, but that keeps coming unclipped. I'm just not a fan of the, I guess it's me being picky, but I feel like if a figure is going to do the two hands big gun thing like this, one, the gun should, I think, stand out more. I know there's like third-party stuff for this, but I think the gun should stand out more, and I also feel like he needs a little bit better, not so much articulation, but clearance for all this. Because if you really want to get expressive with it, you've got to mess around with those shoulder pads, and like the shoulder pads can't quite reach if you bring the arms forward too far. So it just kind of, it's slightly disappointing to me in that very specific way, let's say. Not that I think this is bad. I do like this. It's just, I think they could have maybe just pushed it a little further, you know? I feel like it doesn't go too far enough to borrow a line from Futurama. That said, it does look pretty cool holding it, even if it is a little bit on the small side. So, there we have Skyquake, Dreadwing. And now let's get to those size comparisons, because this has gone on for so long. So yeah, this is where his size really kind of took me by surprise, because as I mentioned before, I knew he was leader class, but that didn't really click in my brain until I actually put him next to some other figures, at which point it was like, oh, wow, he is actually rather big. Like, sure, he does stand well over Voyager height, and well over Deluxe height, but, you know, a lot of leaders we've been getting lately have been like Legacy Blitzwing. You know I haven't made a video on him, I no longer own him either, but like Legacy Blitzwing, Siege Astro Train, you know, I was kind of used to that for leader stuff. Like, you know, Megatron, Transmetal 2 Megatron specifically, I felt like was more of an outlier, and it just didn't hit me until doing something like this with, you know, where I had Skyquake next to a couple of other figures that I was just like, oh, he's that leader class, okay. So yeah, I do actually really like how he is rather big and imposing. Also, let's just take a quick moment to appreciate, I think I forgot to bring in Samus, so there's Samus. But let's take a quick moment to appreciate just how much of a glow-up these stickers are for Burnout. It's just great. I love all the extra detailing that it brings out. And I'm not entirely sold on the chrome faceplate. I initially put it on to match the shoulders, but I may take it off. I don't know. Point is, she looks good. This is a really nice set. I like that very much. Anyway, since we looked at him before in vehicle mode, let's bring in Power of the Prime's Dreadwind. So there is Dreadwing with Dreadwind, and, you know, it's Power of the Prime's Deluxe, so of course he's a lot bigger. And the size comparison you've all been waiting for. Here is Dreadwing with the Duck Tank. So yeah, Legacy Prime Universe Dreadwing is actually really good. I really do like this. I was kind of like maybe on the verge of regretting my purchase when I first got him, but once I learned the trick for the transformation of the Nosecone, I've completely come around on this guy. I love the colors, love the paint breakup and deco, although I am really excited to see if we get a Reaper label set for this guy. I'm kind of excited to see how that goes, because I feel like it could be neat. But I feel like he's really cool even without that. And, you know, him being a leader, I feel like in this particular case, this leader class kind of rides that line between small with a lot of, like, smaller than a typical leader with a lot of parts, or huge comparatively. And yeah, I don't know, I like this. It's like, he's not quite as intricate and involved as a smaller leader like Astro Chain or more like Blitzwing, but he's more complex. At least I feel he's more complex than Transmetal 2 Megatron in terms of like parts count engineering and stuff like that. Transmetal 2 Megatron does a lot of really cool stuff, don't get me wrong, but I just think, you know, it's interesting how this is sort of like a mashup between the two, where you've got the size of, you know, what people kind of come to expect from leaders, or used to expect from leaders, coupled with the, you know, not as simple engineering that typically comes with the larger leaders these days. And I think that's neat. And again, he just looks really cool. It's got a lot of decent posability, some really clever transformation stuff. I particularly love the wings that go around the back and close up the calves. That's just neat. And yeah, definitely worth it in my mind. But that also kind of depends on what you're looking for. So, oh, and also, almost forgot to mention this, but I do want to say the plastic on this guy is actually really interesting. Like, most of the blue pieces in particular, this feels, this is silly to say, I know, especially in a video, but this feels like the kind of plastic that they used on Origins Jazz. And that figure felt great. Like, the plastic on that thing felt really nice and dense and sturdy, with this kind of pleasant glossy feeling to it. And the blue on Dreadwing has that same feeling, which I think is really nice. So yeah, really cool figure. I would highly recommend it. Even though I was a little bit uncertain, I'm very glad I took the plunge. Because once I figured out that, or once I found out the trick to the transformation, it was a game changer for me. And with all of that said, and my goodness, that was a lot. I told myself I was doing this to make things easier, and it's still almost an hour long. My apologies. But with all that said, that has been my look at Transformers Legacy Prime Universe Dreadwing. Thank you everybody so much for watching, and also continuing to watch this long if you've made it this far, because I know there's a lot to ask. And yeah, I still don't have a proper outro, and I'm not doing the Nemesis September thing anymore, so I don't really know what else to say to close this out on. Just, we've got more things in the works. See you then.